Southeast of Germany's capital, Berlin, about 100 miles away, lies the town of Sagan. There stood a prisoner of war camp known as Stalag. This POW camp was heavily guarded, making escape nearly impossible. Covering about 60 acres, the camp resembled a massive fortress, capable of holding over 10,000 prisoners. During World War II, Hitler ordered the construction of this camp, specifically to imprison Allied airmen, including those from Britain, the United States, Canada, Norway, and several other countries. These pilots were all highly skilled. Many of them had previously escaped from other Nazi prisons, successfully breaking free. It was precisely for this reason that they were confined to this supposedly unbreakable prison. To make Stalag a cage no one could escape, its designers went to great lengths. The prison was surrounded by sharp barbed wire, arranged in double layers. Standing 9 feet high, seismic sensors were buried underground, while Nazi guards manned the watchtowers 24/7. They also carried out unannounced searches on the prisoners. Around the camp, within the shaded perimeter, lay only farmland and dense pine forests. Trying to cross this area before being captured was as difficult as climbing to the heavens. The harsh control and airtight security turned this prison into a living hell for the inmates. But on the dark night of March 24, 1944, an event occurred that shocked the world. It not only shattered the myth of this prison, but also humiliated Hitler himself. 76 prisoners of war, right under the noses of the Nazi guards, dug a tunnel 30 feet deep and 300 feet long, and successfully escaped from this so-called impenetrable Nazi POW camp. Today, we will revisit this incredible story from World War II in full detail. How the prisoners, despite heavy surveillance, managed to dig 3 tunnels. Of the 76 men who escaped, how many actually reached safety? And those who were recaptured, what kind of cruel retaliation did the dictator inflict on them? World War II was one of the darkest and most chaotic periods in human history. At that time, the world's most powerful forces fought for supremacy, waging a bloody war that lasted for years. Tens of millions of people perished in this catastrophe. On one side was the Allies, composed of the United States, Britain, the Soviet Union, France, and others. On the other side was the Axis, led by Germany, with Japan and Italy as its partners. In pursuit of victory, they were willing to gamble everything. By 1941, the Nazi army had already turned Western Europe upside down. At the time, Germany's air force was formidable, equipped with one advanced aircraft after another, and had shot down a great number of Allied planes. During this period, Germany captured thousands of Allied pilots, along with hundreds of thousands of artillerymen. To house these prisoners of war, Germany hastily built numerous POW camps. Many of these camps became notorious for their mistreatment of prisoners. Even with tight security, a number of POWs still managed to escape. This caused the German dictator Hitler great humiliation. So he ordered the construction, about 100 miles southeast of Berlin in the town of Sagan, of a prisoner of war camp from which escape would be impossible. This would later become Stalag. This 60-acre camp was divided internally into 5 separate sections, primarily to imprison pilots from Britain, the United States, and the Commonwealth. Most of these prisoners had previously attempted to escape from other German prisons, only to be recaptured by German forces. For this very reason, Stalag security was raised to the extreme. The camp was surrounded by 9-foot-high walls, entwined with double layers of barbed wire. Between the 2 fences lay a 10-meter-wide no-man's land. This was called the warning zone. Any prisoner who tried to cross it would be ordered shot immediately. Just 100 meters from the warning zone stood watchtowers filled with Nazi soldiers. They carried machine guns, ready to open fire on anyone attempting escape. Even more frightening, the Nazis had installed seismic sensors 9 feet below the ground. Even the slightest vibration could be detected by the sensors, and within seconds the signal would be sent to the German guards. Another unique feature of Stalag was that the area around the camp was desolate. It was either open, empty land or dense pine forest. looking into the distance, not a trace of a town could be seen. In winter, temperatures here dropped below freezing, further worsening the prisoners' struggle for survival. To prevent escape tunnels from being dug, the camp was built on sandy soil. As soon as anyone started digging, the sand would collapse. Not only that, the barracks of the camp were raised on concrete stilts 60 centimeters above ground, supported by pillars. Any attempt to dig a tunnel from below was destined to fail. Each section contained 15 wooden barracks, all supported by these concrete pillars. The prisoners' daily lives were strictly controlled. Every morning and evening, roll call was held. Every single prisoner was counted. If even one was missing, the alarm would sound immediately, and the entire camp went into lockdown. What made things worse was, the roll calls had no fixed schedule, making it almost impossible for the prisoners to plan an escape. And yet, in the northern sector of Stalag, a plan was being devised that could break free of this iron cage was still secretly brewing. The prison authorities would never have imagined that these seemingly trapped prisoners were planning to deliver a fatal blow to the Nazi security system. This impossible escape attempt was orchestrated under the leadership of Royal Air Force Squadron leader Roger Bushell. Bushell had been the commander of No. 90 Spitfire Squadron during World War II. On May 23, 1940, during the Battle of France, his plane was shot down. He was then captured by the Germans and held in a temporary POW camp. But Bushell never gave up on freedom. He soon escaped from the temporary camp and made it all the way to the Swiss border. But just before crossing, he was caught by the Germans. He was then imprisoned at Bark Camp on the Baltic Sea coast. Months later, on his transfer to another prison, he once again tricked the German guards and escaped. He reached Czechoslovakia, but fate mocked him again. He was captured once more, and the civilians who had sheltered him were brutally shot by German guards. His repeated escape attempts made the Germans hate Bushell bitterly. In May 1942, the Germans locked him inside the supposedly impregnable Stalag. But a man as brave and determined as Bushell would never be held for long. From the moment he entered the camp, he began planning his escape. Bushell first mobilized the prisoners of the North Compound, inspiring them with the hope of escape. By March 1943, 600 prisoners had joined the escape plan. They trusted Bushell completely, willing to follow him unconditionally. To advance the preparations, they formed an escape committee called X, with Bushell as the leader. His comrades affectionately called him Big X. Although 600 prisoners were involved in the plan, in the end, only 200 spots were available for those who could attempt the escape and seize their freedom. To avoid internal conflict, the final decision on who could escape was left to Bushell and the escape committee. After discussion, the committee made a crucial decision. Not just to dig one tunnel, but 3. They were codenamed Tom, Dick, and Harry. The reason for digging 3 tunnels was to provide backups. Even if one was discovered by the Germans, the other 2 could still continue. Bushell firmly believed that once the Germans found one tunnel, they would assume the entire escape plan was crushed, and thus lower their guard against the other 2. The plan was good, but the first problem was where to start digging. To solve this, prisoners with engineering knowledge drew detailed maps of the camp, carefully checking every possible escape point. The barbed wire of Stalag, its tall watchtowers and guards on duty 24/7, made it seem like an unbreakable fortress. But after days of tireless reconnaissance, the prisoners finally found a weakness in the camp. They determined the starting and exit points of the 3 tunnels and immediately began digging. The Tom Tunnel began inside Hut 123, with its exit planned in the woods west of the camp. The Dick Tunnel started in the washroom of Hut 122, with its exit also aimed at the woods. The last tunnel, Harry, began in Hut 104, planned to break out into the woods north of the camp. Once digging began, At the end of each day, the entrances to the tunnels were hidden with stoves, wood, or other debris. Even if German guards unexpectedly entered the huts, they would never discover the hidden entrances. During the digging, the prisoners displayed extraordinary creativity and engineering skills, nothing short of miraculous. To avoid the seismic sensors installed 9 feet underground, all 3 tunnels were dug to a depth of about 30 feet. Each tunnel stretched about 300 feet long. Along the way, larger chambers were dug to serve as sites for air pumps, workshops, and temporary gathering points. The prisoners also cleverly used supplies delivered by the Red Cross. These supplies, sent weekly to provide humanitarian aid to the prisoners of Stalag, came in packages from the International Red Cross. Inside were soups, canned corned beef, powdered milk, spam, chocolate, coffee, and cheese. Every 3 months, the prisoners also received parcels from their families, which contained toothbrushes, clothes, razors, and daily necessities. What seemed like ordinary supplies were transformed into escape tools by the prisoners. Powdered milk cans were turned into ventilation system parts, bringing fresh air into the tunnels to prevent suffocation. Wires and bulbs stolen from the camp were made into dim lamps. The light was faint enough to be invisible outside, yet provided illumination for the digging work. To prevent the sandy tunnel walls from collapsing, they dismantled wooden bed slats beneath their bunks to reinforce the tunnels. They also stole hundreds of knives, forks, spoons, and towels to use as digging tools. The trickiest problem was how to dispose of the excavated sand. The tunnel sand was yellow, while the camp's soil was gray. If the yellow sand was spotted, the entire plan would be exposed. To solve this problem, the prisoners formed a team called the Penguins. They sewed small pouches inside their trousers and filled their socks with sand as well. Then, pretending to stroll around the camp, they would discreetly release the sand when guards weren't looking and gently scuff it with their feet, blending the 2 soil colors together. 600 prisoners inside this heavily guarded camp were secretly advancing such a massive escape plan. Yet the Nazi guards had no idea. Digging tunnels, laying makeshift tracks, building ventilation systems, and devising sand disposal methods. Every step was a stinging slap in the face to Hitler and the Nazi security system. In the escape committee, every member had a clear division of labor under the leadership of Lamschitz and Walad Wroclaw. The team was in charge of tunnel digging. Raphael Abraham, together with Tommy Gaze's team, they were busy making German civilian clothes so that escaping prisoners could blend in with the locals without being noticed. Johnny Travis was in charge of preparing escape kits. Another team specialized in forging documents. They secretly obtained a German camera to take pictures of escapees as German civilians, which were then pasted on forged IDs, travel passes, and work permits. To make stamps for the documents, they removed shoe soles to craft stamps and used shoe polish instead of ink. These forged documents were so realistic that they could easily deceive anyone. Anyone could be fooled. Secrecy was at the core of the entire plan. The escape committee clearly stipulated that the word tunnel could never be used. Only the code names Tom, Dick, and Harry. Nazi guards could conduct sudden inspections at any time. Just one mistake, and the whole plan would be exposed. The diggers also had to work bent over for long periods in narrow, oppressive tunnels. Not only was oxygen scarce, but they also faced the constant risk of tunnel collapse. Physical exhaustion and mental pressure did not break a single person. They sang songs, joked, and encouraged each other, persevering for several months. As expected, in September 1943, the Nazis discovered the Tom Tunnel and destroyed it with explosives. Fortunately, the other 2 tunnels remained undiscovered. But only a month later, a new crisis emerged. On October 29, 1943, 3 prisoners in the East Camp dug a 100-foot-long tunnel and successfully escaped from Stalag Luft III despite an all-out Nazi search. They were never caught. This incident prompted a significant increase in Stalag Luft III's security level. The surveillance of all 5 camp areas became much stricter. Subsequent escapes became even more difficult. At the same time, The Nazis expanded the camp. The risk of discovering the dig tunnel increased. Helplessly, the escape committee decided to abandon dig and converted it into a storage room, instead used to store sand and digging tools extracted from the hairy tunnel, along with the digging tools. Now the only hope left was the hairy tunnel. All 600 prisoners worked together to speed up the digging progress. On March 14, 1944, after months of hard work, the hairy tunnel was finally completed, ready for the escape at any moment. But the committee did not want to act hastily. They were waiting for a perfect night, with the sky covered by clouds. No moon, only pitch dark night. It would hide 200 prisoners as they passed through the guards' sightlines. The chosen 200 prisoners prayed every evening for such a night to arrive. Finally, on March 24, 1944, their moment came. The sky was overcast that day, and the faint light of the new moon was almost completely blocked. The night was thick and dark, ready to conceal their movements. This page would be the last one for the 200 prisoners in the camp. To ensure a smooth escape, the 200 prisoners were divided into 3 groups, ranked by priority. The first group consisted of committee members, prisoners who spoke foreign languages, and those who contributed most to the escape preparations. They received the best civilian clothes, documents, and supplies, and would escape through the tunnel first. The other 2 groups were only given ordinary maps, medium-quality travel documents, and clothes, and followed behind the first group. Night fell, and all the prisoners about to escape refused to go to Barrack 104. Every heart was pounding with fear and anticipation. Some were lost in the thought of breathing fresh air. Others were anxious, wondering if they could escape successfully. At 8:45 p.m., the first prisoner entered the tunnel, crawling toward the exit. But due to the cold weather, the tunnel exit had frozen over. It took him more than an hour to pry it open. Just as that problem was solved, a new trouble appeared. The tunnel exit was not in the planned wooded area, but instead emerged in an open field 30 feet away. The diggers' calculations had been slightly off. Someone suggested digging further to adjust the exit, but the idea was quickly rejected. The prisoners' forged documents already had the date printed. Delaying would render the documents invalid, making the situation even more dangerous. In the end, they decided to use the cover of night to dash across the open field. The tunnel was very narrow, allowing only one person to crawl at a time. Escape was much slower than planned. Originally, 1 prisoner was expected to escape per minute, but in reality, it took 6 minutes for 1 person to get out. Only 10 people could escape per hour. To ensure safety, they tied a long rope between the tunnel entrance and exit. Whenever a prisoner successfully escaped, they would shake the rope to signal it was safe. The next prisoner would then begin crawling. But another unexpected event occurred. Air raid sirens suddenly sounded across Germany, cutting off power to Stalag. The lights in the tunnel went out. In the pitch-black tunnel, any small mistake could cause the sand to collapse, ruining the entire plan. The prisoners could only wait inside the tunnel for power to be restored, from midnight to 1 a.m. No one was able to escape. Time ticked by minute. The darkness before dawn grew more precious. By 5 a.m., only 76 of the 200 prisoners had successfully crawled out. After escaping, they quickly split into small groups and fled in different directions. Some headed toward the train station, while others hid in the forest. Some ran toward the train station, while others hid in the woods. Some looked for routes to nearby towns. But just as the 77th prisoner crawled out of the tunnel, the first light of dawn appeared. A German guard spotted him. The guard instantly realized what had happened and immediately sounded the alarm. Searchlights turned on at once. The Germans quickly found the tunnel entrance, stopping the remaining prisoners from escaping. Barrack 104 and the tunnel descended into chaos. Prisoners who hadn't escaped in time quickly changed back into their prison uniforms, threw their forged documents into the fire, and swallowed the hidden supplies. They had to destroy all evidence of their participation in the escape. Once the alarm rang, the Germans immediately sealed off the entire camp and blew up the hairy tunnel. All prisoners still waiting or hiding in the tunnel were captured. The camp commander, Friedrich Wilhelm von Lindequist, gathered all the prisoners together. In the biting cold wind, he made them stand for inspection. It was finally confirmed that 76 prisoners had escaped from the camp. This was the largest escape by Allied post during World War II. It stood as a mark of shame, etched on the face of Hitler and the Nazis. At Germany's most secure POW camp, the 76 escapees scattered across the forests, villages, and towns of Nazi Germany, each desperately seeking a way out of Germany. When Hitler learned of the escape, he was furious. To him, the collective escape of 6 men was not only a security failure, but also a personal insult to his authority. It was also a personal insult to his authority. What followed was the largest manhunt in German history. All police stations, train stations, and border checkpoints were urgently mobilized. Posters with the prisoners' descriptions and wanted notices were posted all across Germany. Hitler even deployed about 10,000 German soldiers to assist in the search, making Nazi soldiers omnipresent. To expose forged documents, Hitler ordered a redesign of the passes. Coupled with the freezing weather, food shortages, and unfamiliar terrain, the prisoners' escape became a life-or-death ordeal. In the end, of the 76 escapees, only 3 managed to get out of Germany. 2 Norwegian pilots, Per Berglance and James Moore, along with a Dutch pilot, Bram van der Stok, avoided German patrols and reached Sweden. Berglance and Moore evaded capture and boarded a Swedish ship to neutral Sweden. Van der Stok managed to reach Gibraltar and eventually returned to the UK. The remaining 73 were not so fortunate. Most were discovered by local residents or German patrols and recaptured. The mastermind of the escape, Bushel, had traveled for 100 miles in 10 hours with his companion Bernard Sidhal, reaching just 20 miles from the French border. But on March 26, 1944, he was captured by German forces at an abandoned station. Hitler's fury had already spiraled out of control. He ordered all 73 recaptured prisoners to be executed. This command completely violated the Geneva Conventions. According to the conventions, even if POWs escaped, they could only be subjected to a maximum of 10 days of solitary confinement. Therefore, some of Hitler's generals and advisors tried to block the order, citing potential international backlash. But Hitler's cruel nature showed no regard for human life. He ignored the Geneva Convention's regulations and secretly executed 50 of the most influential prisoners among the 73. The German secret police, the Gestapo, carried out the executions. First, all 73 prisoners were interrogated. Then 50 of them were selected for execution. Bushel and Sidhal were tricked into getting into a car under the pretense of being moved for escape attempts and were shot in the Ramstein area of Germany. The remaining 48 were divided into groups, transported by truck to forests or remote roads, and secretly executed. After the Great Escape, Stalag security became much stricter. The Germans deployed additional guards and began regular inspections for new tunnels. The daily life of prisoners was tightly controlled, but the prisoners' morale did not collapse. They knew that even though the escape wasn't fully successful, it dealt a heavy blow to the Nazi war machine. To hunt the escapees, the Germans had to pull thousands of soldiers from the front lines, as well as police and resources, disrupting frontline deployments. After World War II, the situation was completely reversed. At the Nuremberg trials and other war crime tribunals, Gestapo officials were held primarily accountable. Those who ordered the executions of the escapees, as well as the officers who carried them out, were often sentenced to death. The rest received long-term imprisonment. Later, the remains of the 50 executed prisoners were buried at the old garrison cemetery in Poland. Each gravestone bears their name for future generations to remember. Every year on the Great Escape anniversary, Allied veterans and their families come here to pay tribute to the 50 prisoners who gave their lives for freedom. They are honored